Hi, everyone. Welcome to Forgotten Feminists. It's been quite a while. I've missed you all. Today, we have an incredibly special guest. We have with us Anya. I've never before had somebody who grew up under, the Soviet regime. So I'm very curious to talk about the similarities and differences between our two upbringings under different tyranny or different totalitarian regimes. So, Anya, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I feel very privileged to meet you guys.
Oh, you're so sweet. So let's start off with please giving us just a background about what it's like to grow up in Soviet Russia.
So I'd like actually to give you a little preview of what Soviet Russia was, because in the West, where I live about 30 plus years, I found that people have very vague idea of what USSR was. So I'll give you a 5 minutes lecture, which was, believe me, hard for me to distill my hatred to just 5 minutes. So this USSR, United, whatever, English version of Soviet Republics, right, Socialist Republic, right, started as a coup in 2017 when Communist Party, then called Bolsheviks, took over the power from the newly formed Russian Republic after the Tsar gave up his power. Immediately it started the civil war that took about 10 million lives, and the newly formed Red Army, as they called it at the time, fought long years from 17th to 22nd with what they called White Army, which was Tsarist and democratic forces plus Western armies as well. And Red Army won, and the power of Bolsheviks took for many, many painful years. Joseph Stalin became the secretary of the Communist Party and ruled the Soviet Union until 1953, when he died alone in his urine because everybody was afraid to attend. And how many millions of lives were destroyed by Stalin's terror regime is unknown for now. It's very hard to get to the numbers. Political prisoners, just people who died, the hunger, the gulag, the infamous prison system. It goes on and on and on. He's moving different nationalities, like Tatars from Crimea that you hear on the news, he was moving people, or his collectivization when he moved to the collective farming, just transforming people like cattle in the trains and dumping them in the area which didn't have even housing or anything, just dump them in the field, hoping or not caring whether they will survive. So those numbers of lives are not accounted for. And during the Civil War, they for the first time created the CHK, which is then became KGB, now is FSB. So after 1953, after his death, the terror subsided, but the regime remained, and this is the Russia that I know. Just 2 points I want to make, and then I'll talk about how it felt and what it was like for somebody to live under that regime, which was, comparatively speaking, benign, because we were not rounded up to work in Siberia or to die. So economically, it was all fueled by philosophies and theories of the left. So anti-religion, so it was secular society. Our ideology was communism. But believe me, it was exactly the same as your religion. We had God. We had multiple gods. We had Lenin, Stalin, Marx. These were our gods. You can't say anything that they said anything wrong. We had, as you know, probably, that Lenin's body still now is a mausoleum on a red square in Kremlin, in Moscow. But economically, it was pure socialism, nationalized means of production. So they say people own everything, but reality is government owns everything. They owned land, they owned every factory, every coffee shop, every repair shop. It's something so alien to practically every society, probably except for North Korea today. Because even in a religion oppression, you still have your private shops. Like you go to a cobbler to fix your shoes, it's the cobbler's shop. Not in the Soviet Union. Government owns everything. And government owns you, really, truly. Politically, as it was claimed, it was dictatorship of the proletariat. In reality, dictatorship of the government. Now, what the features of societies that we want to look at, like rule of law, didn't exist. It's a lawless society. Government is always right. Freedom of speech did not exist. You're allowed to say only what you're allowed to say. And believe me, the persecution was from shaming to expelling to firing to imprisonment. Elections, sham, all through. We don't have time. I have a favorite story of my first election, first and last. I never participated again, even though my vote was always counted every year. If we have time, I'll tell you, you will just laugh your heads off. Freedom of movement, zero. You cannot go and find an apartment and live in it. You have to be assigned a room or some space to live by the authorities. But they will not assign it to you just out of nowhere. You have to get what we call propiska. In other words, you're basically, what's the word? You just assign the place where you live and you live there. And it's even worse to the farmers because they literally, during the Stalin, they didn't even have passports, so they couldn't move anywhere. You're almost in prison, you're almost a slave, very close to this condition. Indoctrination, just like you guys, they indoctrinate. It starts in the kindergarten. My daughter was born at the tail end of the Soviet regime. And I sent her to the kindergarten, and she came home, like literally in the first month, telling me, Mom, I know who was the best person in the world. I said, oh, who was that? And she goes, Lenin, Grandpa Lenin. To me, and by that time, I was like so anti-Soviet. And I was just struck. This is my child, and she is already poisoned. And that kind of settled me into, I'm moving no matter what. I'm leaving this place. I'm not going to let her go through years and years of indoctrination and then years and years of cleaning her head. Then wrong, I talked about wrong ideas. And it continues through your entire life. And one more point I want to make is that occupants, the Russian country, Tsarist Russia, was an empire that occupied other nations with different languages, different religions, different cultures, just by force. Some of those alliances were more alliances of convenience because small countries wanted to be protected by big Russia. And the Russian Tsarist regime always had policies of Russification of those nations, where if you want to conduct business or have government positions, you have to speak Russian, so on and so forth. USSR continued that. So when people in the States, for example, hear Soviet Republic, they envision something like American states. But no, these are occupied national territories whose cultures and languages are being wiped out. And some of those territories were occupied relatively recently, like Baltic republics in the late 30s, early 40s, or Western Ukraine in an alliance with Hitler in the late 30s, so on and so forth. So that's the criminal enterprise that is still spreading its poison today, that I'm coming from, that made me, a precious child, think that this is the best country in the world, that we're the best people, that everybody else is the enemy, that just think about how similar it is to what you grew up with. And I just thought that it would be good for our souls to team up and vent and share, and B, for us to know we're in it together, even though our oppressors want us to look at each other as the other. So that's my passionate introduction.
Oh, that's beautiful, Anya. I'm really, really struck, as you said, I'm really, really struck by the similarities. And what's jarring to me is how fragile we are as human beings, how easy it is to control us, is what I want to say.
Unbelievable.
You know? Like, I'm talking about these 50 Muslim majority countries. Most people are illiterate, you know, the same cannot be said for Russia. You know, like it's a different, it doesn't matter. Like, we as human beings are so, yeah, just so susceptible to being controlled. Like, it feels like it's so easy to control our minds. And the reason why that scares me so much, of course, is because we can kind of see it happening around us today. But people are full of such arrogance, such, you know, hubris, where they feel that this can't happen to us, or this can't happen to me, or that they are different than we are. And it's, you know, it's eye-opening, like terrifyingly eye-opening, to realize that different parts of the world, different ideologies, but they can still really make you believe that the most vicious, atrocious, horrible, tyrannical system that you can actually believe, this is the best place on earth. I am so lucky to be born here. I am so lucky to be a part of this community. Like, it's just,
it's horrifying. I agree. And believe me, I spent my life thinking about those things, because you're forced. If you're not, because your thought process becomes yours, because at some point you understand that you've been told doesn't look like it was truth. And once you put your foot on that path, it may take long, it may take short, but there's no walking back. You keep thinking and you keep uncovering the truths. So I spent my lifetime thinking about those issues, and the more I think about it, and it kind of comes down to some of the issues you raised in our exchanges, Yasmine, left versus right, and religion versus secular societies, oppression of this kind, oppression of that kind. And I'm thinking it all comes down to me too. We are human beings. There is no other. We are human beings. You don't take somebody else's life. You do not impose your way of thinking on somebody else other than those core principles. And those core principles come out in every society in the human history. People try to say, hey, we should not kill each other. We should recognize our shared world and shared humanity in each other. Everything else is less important. And they're trying to manipulate us and tell us that something else is more important. No. If you had this core belief that you don't take somebody's life just because you think that person is wrong, which has happened during the Russian coup and then what they call revolution, they were just killing people because they were enemy.
And this is kind of what I want to touch on, is this other, this enemy, because quite often in the history of Jewish people, you are the black sheep. You are the one who is chosen by different societies, different communities, different civilizations over the ages as the other. Now, I want to talk a little bit about specifically being Jewish and growing up under this regime. I know that one woman that I know who grew up same under Soviet Russia, they used to have to practice Christianity secretly and celebrate Christmas secretly. There are so many holidays with in the Jewish faith. How were you able to do that? Did you have to do that? What was it like as a Jewish girl growing up under Soviet Russia?
You know, it's the weirdest thing. It's hard to explain. So first of all, hi, Tricia. So first of all, it's a secular society, USSR. Every religion is oppressed. Nobody is openly practicing any religion. The Jewish people, in the beginning, during the revolution, joined the revolution in big numbers because in Tsarist Russia, they were assigned to the little shtetls, the Jewish ghettos, had no rights, couldn't get education. So they were very happy to join the revolution because it was giving them the freedom of movement, freedom of education, and so on and so forth. And then anti-Semitism began. So, for example, in my parents' generation, they all switched their. So, I read recently a little notes that my mom took, who is 99 today, not today, but right now, about her childhood. And in her childhood, her grandparents were practicing Judaism, going to the synagogue. My father had, I forgot the term. All of a sudden, one of the religious cantor, he had a cantor in his family who was performing ceremonies in the synagogue. But my parents' family, they all switched their Jewish names, Jewish sounding names, to Russian sounding names. For example, my mom is Rebecca, but she became Rita to hide her Jewishness. My grandfather was Judah, if you say it in English version. Basically Ehud, and he became Julie. Everybody hidden their names. I have a picture of my mom's group of friends when she was young, and on the other side were written all the Jewish names of theirs, but they had Russian sounding names. So there was no religion, and believe me, I don't miss it. I'm an atheist by upbringing and by conviction, but religion also include the cultural component. So the only cultural component that was left to us as Jews was for some of us who spoke Yiddish, which is Jewish adapted language, which my parents spoke in front of us, me and my sister, if they wanted us not to understand what they were saying, which is, and food. So accents and food. So we had Jewish food, which I loved, of course. My dad would go, the synagogue was practically not practicing, but dad would go there every Passover and bring a huge pack of matzah. So things like that. Also, we knew that we were Jews because of anti-Semitism. That's what brought Jewishness into us, because basically there was nothing else. But in Soviet Russia, nationality is not equal citizenship, it's ethnicity. And your ethnicity was written in every questionnaire. And just think about for a second, in school, when they gave us a form or questionnaire to fill in, and we usually joke the number 5, because usually the question, your ethnicity, was number 5 on a questionnaire. And when I wrote Jewish, I covered with my hand because I didn't want people to know, kids to know that I am Jewish, because it was embarrassing. And the Jew was a bad word. So they would say, hey, you have a Jewish bicycle, meaning your bicycle is weird or bad. That's the mixture of the Jewishness that I grew up with. But the older I became, the more self-aware I became. I remember, by the way, when I was a kid, all of a sudden I realized we must be Jewish, just judging by some conversations. Parents discuss so-and-so didn't get the job because she is Jewish, blah, blah, blah. And parents talking in Yiddish. And I felt so proud that I figured something out. I said, guys, are we Jewish or something? And they said, and they looked at each other like, oh, that's scary. And they said, well, yeah, I remember it by this day. It was like a dirty secret is out. But then I became proud of it. I had an opportunity to read up on that. All my friends were Jewish because there's the whole aspect of being Jewish and being not prosecuted, oppressed, basically. You want to discuss it with your friends, and you could only discuss it with Jewish friends. So you became surrounded by people like you. So we became marginalized group of people, which also helps you to look at the society from outside and clear your mind that way. So that's basically kind of high points of what it meant, what it felt like, rather.
Yeah. So another parallel between our two lives, the anti-Semitism. One of my friends, Max, was saying that when we were talking about the different things that Muslims say about Jewish people, because I was trying to explain that the anti-Semitism is not even considered anti-Semitism. It's just like air or water. Like it's just part of discussion, like it's normal. And he said, yeah, in Russia, we say if the water doesn't flow from the taps, it's because of the Jews. Like everything is the Jews' fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
So you touched on one thing there right at the end of your point, where you talked about just being able to see the world from the outside, see your society from the outside. So being like an objective observer. Can you talk to us a little bit about, I know there wasn't probably one, it was probably many, but maybe one situation that you can remember that made you for the first time or so realize like, this is a sham. Like for me, it felt like I was in Truman's Show. I don't know if you remember that movie, Truman Show. Like I just had this moment, like, is anything real? Like I have been duped for my whole life. Can you tell us about that moment for you?
If you don't mind, I'll mention a couple, a few.
I don't mind at all. No,
Thank
please.
you. So I have like moments of self-awareness when I reflect back. Oh, that was like, aha, but there were many. Yeah. The first was that I remember when I was 17, my cousin and I were discussing the life and, like teenagers do. And we concluded we live in a very bad country, because by that time we already knew everybody lies, nothing is what they say, you just can't trust anything. So you're very cynical, but you don't have yet anything positive to hang your soul on and your thinking on. So you're just completely demotivated and turned internal because everything is bullshit. And we concluded it's a shitty place, but it's the best place on earth.
Because you had no comparison.
When I look back, and I am 17, is the age of hopes and aspirations. And I feel so sorry for my poor self to have this kind of view of the world. It's a horrible place, but it's the best place in the world. And then there were kind of a lot of thinking, debates with my friends, and there was a lot of kind of transitioning. And then we had a debate about different economic conditions and this and that. And a friend of mine invited his dad and said, Dad, help us sort through this. And he said, well, guys, think about this. No, you know what? I will not talk about it. It will require a history lesson. We don't have time for that. Sorry. Let me move forward. I had to pass an exam. We had the subject, political economy. It's economical systems looked at through the prism of political views. And we had political economy of capitalism and political economy of socialism. Okay? So political economy, and typically this kind of ideological subjects, we faked, we didn't study, the bullshit you can put on paper and pass. But in that case, the professor really hated me. I knew I had to know, so I studied. So political economy of capitalism explains capitalist hires the workers. Workers create additional product through their work. Capitalist sells the product, gets the profit, basically additional product created by the workers, and pocketed is, which is exploitation of the workers. Well, first of all, it didn't make huge sense to me because I'm like, yeah, but he created the business. He thought of it. He hired people, so he has to get paid for that for sure. I don't know whether it's all fair or not, but kind of in principle, not necessarily exploitation, and people get paid for their work. So I'm like, okay, so that's one. And then explanation of political economy of socialism, where the means of production are nationalized, which is where I lived. And they explain this. Government sets up the business, the plant. The workers work there and graced by the salaries, which believe me were meager, and create, so in capitalist society, workers create additional costs, additional value. In socialist, additional product. Okay. Government take that additional product, sells it, collects money, and distributes this money to people in the form of free education, free health system, all of which sucks. And I'm reading this, I'm like, what? The process of creating products is the same. Additional product or additional value or whatever is the same. So somebody pay your money directly, somebody pays you money indirectly. It's all a question. It's the same thing. It's all a question of how it all owned, distributed, processed, and by that time, I already knew that the rest of the world is not worse, that the free world is better, the lives are better. And that was a watershed moment for me that gave me, first of all, intellectually, the whole thing collapsed. Whether I realized it or not, somewhere in me, I thought there are some foundations, there are some wisdom, there are some good intentions, there is something there. And at that moment of intellectual understanding of the stupidity of their claims, it's not necessarily kind of canceled it for me for the rest of my life, but it was like, okay, I'm going to question everything now. Now, nothing goes into my head unquestioned, unlooked, unchallenged. This is it. And second moment of similar, maybe more of an emotional watershed moment for me was when I read Dr. Zhivago by, help me, Pasternak. Dr. Zhivago, if you didn't see a movie or read a book, it tells you the story of what we call intelligentsia, so educated class, privileged class of Tsarist times, who's caught in the middle of the Soviet destruction of life. And why it was a watershed moment for me, because, I read so many Soviet books. I was reading really a lot when I was growing up. And then one of the Soviet narratives was proletariat, the workers and farmers are the people. And so in a Soviet literature, they're painted as heroes, strong characters, strong morals, characters of integrity. They know their enemy. which is bourgeois, capitalist, intelligentsia, people of books, the knowledge, in other words, intellectual elite that may sway away the controlled public. They are always painted as weak, no character, no principles. They're constantly fumbling. And in Dr. Zhivago, I saw real people, the people of integrity, of love, of knowledge, of compassion, but also flawed, just real people. And the whole Soviet literature, just all of it, died. And that one night, it was, by the way, a forbidden book. So I had it from what we call samizdat. It means that somebody risked their lives making a copy of a book that they probably got from the Westerner. And I was given it for the night. So I read that book in one night. And it was the moment, like almost physical. It gives me chills right now. Everything I read until then from Soviet authors died on that night. I understood. I am so programmed. I am so bullshitted. I am a child. I have to start from the beginning and relearn. So these were like one intellectual and one from literature, emotional, and like left brain and right brainy, all of it together. These were that I remember as life altering.
Yeah. Fascinating. Fascinating. When you were talking about in school and learning about, capitalism versus socialism and all that, and it kind of reminded me of how a lot of us that have denounced Islam or even denounced Christianity did so because we read the Quran or because we read the Bible. So it's like their books tell on themselves. The truth is there if people just bother to read it. That's the core message is flawed. So I have so many questions for you, but I'm going to one of the main reasons why we wanted to meet was because we were both really interested in the fact that I came from such an incredibly conservative right-wing ideology, and you came from such a left-wing ideology. Of course, we've already touched on so many of the similarities, but both of us did the thing where we ran to the opposite side because we wanted to get as far away as possible. So of course I ran to the left and you ran to the right, and now we both find ourselves comfortably, moderately in the middle, not wanting to be part of either one of those two camps. Can you tell us a little bit of, I've talked at length about the things that have made me want to, sort of disillusioned with the left. What were some parts that made you disillusioned with the right?
First of all, I want to say that I'm as upset with the left as you are. I'm upset with both extremes to my core. And especially when it comes to the your fight and your stand for the right of women in Muslim societies. The left position that they feel compelled to defend religions to their dying breath, even facing incredible oppressions justified by the religion, not just oppression that happens to be in a Muslim country, justified by the religion. Really terrible, terrible. But the right, and I can only speak for American right, my disillusion with American, first of all, I placed myself in the center when I arrived to America to begin with, because I had this idiosyncrasy with being a member of a party. I come from the country of a single party.
Mm-hmm.
belonging to a party, towing the party line, the loyalty to the party
Yep.
made me throw up. But I knew I'm leaning towards right. I'm pro-capitalism. You can't even by now, you can't convince me against capitalism that gave us prosperity and so on and so forth. But also, if you think about liberalism, to me, liberalism, the Enlightenment and liberalism, the individual freedom, the rights of the individual, as opposed to me being part of the right of the state, which is the only right that exists, and you're nobody, and you're supposed to do only whatever states needs. Of course, I want a smaller, more efficient government. So all those kind of early conservatism, early 20th century, I should say, maybe mid 20th century, I'm definitely philosophically, intellectually leaning towards then and now. And so my disillusionment with American rights started when I saw encroachment on those things. I thought that true American conservatism should be the famous sayings like, I passionately disagree with you, but I will defend your right to say what you think till your dying breath. That's what I believe in. I want to have open debates. No thoughts should be prohibited. And I've noticed that American right starts encroaching on those. I remember there was a moment when American government, Congress was deciding if a particular woman, and it was George Bush's government, if her life support should be taken from her by Congress, a particular woman, a person. Forgive me if I offend you with abortion rights, but abortion rights to me, not a government business in principle. There are all sorts of details that must be sorted out for sure, but in principle, not government's business. So those kinds of things I started noticing in the right, and I started noticing that there's no such strong commitment to what I really loved about American right and what I read about American right in practice. I was not, however, very politically knowledgeable or active or even informed, even though it was my pride to vote in every single election. And be relatively educated. But if you think about, I came to the United States in 1990, my English was rudimentary. I was a single mother, had to put food on the table. So it took me years to begin understanding the language, the culture, the political issues. By the time I became more of an American in that sense, the American right was already teaming up with radical religion, radical Christians. And by 2016, Trump took American right over. And this is, to me, a clear tyranny that this group of people is proposing to the United States. And to my horror, the propaganda machine is working very actively. And to my horror, like 10 years ago, you would ask me, I said, yeah, this whole bullshit that took over Russia, pragmatic, educated, strong, conservative Americans, you can't fool them. You can fool a small group of people, but come on, you can't fool them. Well, turns out you can.
Yeah.
So I don't want to minimize the danger from the left.
No, because it's the same thing. Exactly. Everything you described is also can be said about the left. The
Absolutely.
same thing about the propaganda machine, the same thing about this belief that, oh no, these people are too educated, these people are too politically aware, these people have, convictions and values and integrity. No.
No.
It makes you start to realize that, no, we're all just just like I said earlier on, where it's so easy to control us. So depending on what the flavor of the month is, you know, is
Exactly.
it the socialist ideology from Soviet Russia? Is it Sharia from the Islamic countries? Is it, you know, the progressive left now in America? Is it the MAGA in America? It's whatever
All the
it
same.
is, it's all the same.
The playbook is the same.
Yeah, politically, religiously, like with cults, all of it. They all follow the same playbook.
It's the other, and it's the fear.
Yeah, yeah, the fear.
And it's and the new thing that showed up, and I think Putin was the first one who introduced this, is there is no truth. You can never know what happened. You will never know. And everybody lies, and everybody is corrupt, and everybody is shit, and there is nothing to believe in. So you might as well go with me. And this whole, and Yasmine, I know you brought up, and probably will bring up in a minute, the whole new environment, the digital environment, the internet, the civil society, social media, all that helps to spread those things so quickly. And so I believe strongly, and I don't know what you guys think, that we're in the environment when extreme left and extreme right are different flavors of the same.
Completely agree.
And we are here, and I am struggling to find the word for who we are. Not necessarily centrist, because within this block of us, we may subscribe to different kinds of philosophical, economical, political, all sorts of different beliefs and principles. But what unites us, that we're willing to come to the table and discuss those views respectfully, with honestly, good intentions, and with all the principles we talked about, that we hoped to find new homes we found out for ourselves, whether physically or intellectually. And I don't think we have yet reached the moment when we all of us around the world who are facing those struggles can unite under the banner. We're not centrist. No, we're something else. We're not extreme.
Yes.
But there are no thinkers who unite us. There are no intellectuals who say, okay, this is the ideology, this is the philosophical platform, this is who we are. And I think that's our problem. We can't not unite under this is who we are. We don't have to be afraid of each other. We don't have to fight each other. We have to work with each other. And we can yell at each other if we disagree, but we're part friends.
So what you're saying is hitting me right in the heart, because I have an organization called Free Hearts, Free Minds. And that organization focuses on two groups of people. Number one, people who have denounced Islam in Muslim majority countries, so ex-Muslims. And number two, LGBT people living in those Muslim majority countries, because both of those groups of people are persecuted and or executed. Now, when I go around trying to get funding or support for my organization, I finally had one person. It was the executive director of the Ayan Ali Foundation. He was finally honest to me, and he said, Yasmine, listen, nobody funds the middle. He said, your problem is one side you're supporting Islamophobes, and the other side you're supporting gays. So nobody wants to support you. You're not going to get funding from anybody. You know, it was such a nihilistic, sad, dark, disheartening thing to hear. But, you know, it's not obviously not going to make me stop. I'm still continuing puttering around with my less than $1,000 a month that I get on Patreon. You know, we're still making it happen. We're still doing amazing stuff. I have phenomenal people working with me. You know, I'm not the kind of person that takes no for an answer. When somebody says no to me, I say, fuck you. And then I do it myself. Same thing I did with my book. I just
That's why we love you.
No. Yeah, fine. I don't need any of you. I'll do it myself. But exactly what you're saying is totally correct. The two extremes are solid. It's just like Muslims. It's just like Islam. It's just that same thing. Like when you leave the cult, you are not just leaving. This is why in my book I describe it like a school of fish. You're not just leaving the thoughts and the community and the friends and the family and whatever, but you're leaving this huge web of support.
Yes.
Like you always have somebody, whether it is you want to get a mortgage or whether you want to get your car fixed or whether, whatever, there's always like this. It's a tight-knit community where everybody supports everybody, of course, at a very high cost.
Yes.
That you have to be willing to pay that cost. But yeah, these cults, they support each other like crazy.
Yes.
And then we're in the middle here and we don't have anything that's really unifying us, because like you mentioned so many times, the thing that unifies people more than anything is hate. And
Yes.
they are both united in hate for the other. And we are not willing to play that extremist game, and we're not willing to hate another. And so here we are. I'm very conscious of the time because, like I mentioned, I want to finish on time to get to this Iran protest, but I'm going to ask you one more question before I open it up to everybody.
Sure.
If we have to go a little long, we have to go a little long, but I really wanted to ask you this. We've kind of touched on this a little bit, with politicians and media and propaganda and people not knowing what to believe. They hear this, they hear that. What's the truth? I think COVID really exacerbated that.
Yes.
So many different narratives and then contradicting themselves and blah, blah, blah. And so we're so suspicious now. We're very, we're not willing to believe our governments and our medias and everything the way we used to before. So I just wanted to get your take. I know that obviously, you haven't been in Russia for a very long time, but just wanted to get an idea from you on the, a lot of people are attributing a lot of intentions to both Putin and Zelensky, and just the current situation in Ukraine. I know this is a very big question for just a couple of minutes, but what are your thoughts? How are you seeing this situation?
It's a black and white situation, I think.
Oh.
The Ukraine is a sovereign country.
Okay.
Legally and by fact, Russia was at subjugating Ukraine for most of its existence. The Western Ukraine was taken by the USSR in agreement with Hitler in 1939. And Ukraine was fighting for its becoming its own country and culture for about 100 last years, if not all its history. They have a different language. It's different people, even though very, very close to Russian people. And I forgot the year, it probably was 1991 or 1992, when the former Soviet Republic became a sovereign country, which was established by a signed agreement, international agreement between Russia, Russian President Boris Yeltsin, America, UK. There was an agreement written where sovereign borders of Ukraine were guaranteed in exchange for Ukraine giving up nuclear weapons that it had at the time on its territory. So Ukraine is a sovereign nation, just like any country on earth today. And Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014. With a sham referendum, they took Crimea under Russia completely. And they put their troops in some of the areas of eastern Ukraine, known as Lugansk and Donetsk, then in 2014. But the international community got involved, the fighting stopped, the open fighting stopped, and ever since they've been debating, negotiating what to do with those areas. And in February of 2022, Russia made an all-frontal attack on Ukraine, entered their sovereign territory, committing atrocities against humanity, killing people, killing civilians, raping them, killing them with a shot in the back of their skull, rummaging their houses, bombing the civilian structures. And Ukrainian people are defending their country. They want independence. They want to be their own. They don't want anything from Russia other than to leave their land. To me, also, it's a very complex issue in terms of what is driving Putin, what he is announcing, what people try to read his mind. I'm not going to talk about motivations. I'm just talking about the facts of the matter.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Anya. I just, I'm glad to hear that. I wasn't sure what you would say in response to that, because we're hearing some crazy talk from the American right, honest to God, like it's just shocking to me. So that's probably another point of disillusionment over there, I would assume.
Yes, for sure.
So, thank you so much for so succinctly giving us the history of the United States Socialist Republic and this current horrific war that's going on right now between Ukraine and Russia. You're really good at concisely giving us your thoughts. Thank you. So I want to open it up to everybody here now while you guys are considering if you have any questions for oh, we already have a couple of hands popping up. I was going to read the comments to you, but let's go with Ira because that was the first hand that went up.
Okay, hi, thanks.
Hi.
Thanks, Anya. Ну, мой дедушка рядом с Бердичев. So my grandfather's from Ukraine, and
oh, wow.
We have roots there. Spasiba, thank you for what you had to say.
Anytime.
I left the left when I was a teenager. That's half a century ago. Because I got sick of deceiving people and talking down to people and slandering them in my heart.
Right.
If they said something that wasn't progressive, the immediate way my mind was trained to go was to slander them. Oh, they're a racist. Oh, they're a this. Oh, they're a that.
Right.
Oh, that's a code word for racism if you are concerned about crime. Then I got mugged one day and realized it's something real. I'm sorry to say, one has to choose usually in politics, and I think usually the right is less dangerous than the left, but unfortunately, we've got a real danger from both at this point.
Yeah, not today.
The left has been chronic and cumulative, and it's not just authoritarian, it's totalitarian.
Yeah.
It's so-called critical theory of the Marxism-Leninism of my generation, which is not a social democratic Marxism. This is a neo-communist Marxism. So, and in terms of Ukraine, for example, in normal conditions, the left would be defending Ukraine and defending Russia, and a lot of it is. The so-called peace movement is. But because Putin is associated with Trump, everything gets scrambled in a crazy salad.
Sorry, Ira, I have to plug in, not necessarily because he is associated with Trump, but because it's the same ideology.
There's a relation. Yeah, he's a paleo-conservative, and so is Trump. Among the various brands of conservatism, that is their brand. Putin has gone over to counter-revolution and quasi-fascism, which Trump hasn't yet done, but he's gone pretty far in terms of not respecting elections. We will see in Brazil if the same thing happens in a few days. So this is a very worrisome situation. And in normal conditions, the right wing would be strongly supporting Ukraine. And the bulk of it is, and the bulk of the criticism of Biden for not helping Ukraine enough comes from the right. But it's craziness on both sides now. And here we are. So thank you for what you said.
My pleasure. Thank you for listening.
Nichivo.
Just wanted to quickly say before we move on to Erkan that similar crazy stuff is happening with Iran as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But we support what's going on in Iran with all our hearts. We
all do, of course. But I mean, this weird thing that you're seeing on the left with them being supportive of the Islamic regime.
I know.
and trying to say like, oh, we need to, you know, take the sanctions away, and it's just madness. It's just mad. And then you've got people on the left that, anyway, but it's the same sort of thing that Ira was talking about. And it's because they're seeing everything from the American politics lens instead of looking at things, you know, like what's happening in that country, what is right, what is wrong, what is up, what is down. Okay, Erkan, sorry.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Anya, for a really fascinating discussion. And I was reading before I left the UK. I read, I don't know if you've read it, Konstantin Kissin's book, An Immigrant's Love Letter to the West. Have you read that book?
No.
He's also Jewish Russian descent.
Yeah, I know of him.
You know of him, yeah. He arrived in the UK and he wrote this. It was a really awesome book. He wrote this book, An Immigrant's Love Letter to the West. And he said, I was struck by something, the similarity, something you just said in your talk. He said, in a situation where when there is no truth, there are also no lies. You know, it's kind of a profound thing to say. And that's this confusion that we're all kind of caught up in at the moment, isn't it? I think. Yeah, well, you said something along those lines. You know, when there is no truth, there are also no lies. You know. Another thing is, I wonder what you think about. One other thing I was going to say is, I wonder, you know, when you hear one point of comparison that I always think about when it comes to, say, something like socialism and Islam, is you get this kind of no true Scotsman fallacy going on, right? People say, oh, well, we've never really seen true Marxism, right? And people say,
that's a great point.
And people say, oh, Islam, that's not really, that's not
the true
real
Islam.
Yeah, that's not the true.
Oh my God, this is so profound. Yes.
And I wonder what do you say to those people? You know, when you hear people say that.
Oh gosh, I don't know what to say, honestly, but this is so true. You know, I feel lost when I face something like that. But I thought I found one little trick recently. Like, because I follow Yasmine, on Twitter, I do come across a lot of topical, you know, exchanges. And there was one where a lefty, not from US, but I think maybe from UK, who was defending Islam, and somebody criticizing the inability to take off hijab, that you're going to be punished after taking off hijab because of Islam. And so she jumps into defending, oh, it's not the Islam, it's the defense on the right here in America. It's not, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Right? So it's not the religion, it's the clerics who hijacked Islam. And I'm like, where do I begin? And I said, but that's true about everything. Everything that people do. Not religion, not guns, not anything. That's what people do to each other. And I said, but regardless of religion, wouldn't you agree and defend her right to take off hijab and not being punished? Could we agree on that? We don't have to defend or criticize Islam. Can we simply agree this is wrong? And if you're using something to defend it, your defense must be wrong too, because I know this is wrong. I don't know.
It's a simple kind of denialism. It's like, just as soon as I think they know the game is up, right? They know that they've lost the argument, and so the next thing they do is just deny.
Yeah.
Reflect.
And we know what love does with people like Sam Harris or Bill Maher. God forbid they will criticize, and Sam always says, am I not allowed to criticize ideas? Is religion is not a set of ideas? And God forbid you criticize Islamic ideas. You're Islamophobe, and Yasmine is Islamophobe, Anya is Islamophobe. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, but we are Islamophobes. We're not,
Yeah.
it's not a, but the word Islamophobia is a lie because it is a very rational fear. This is a cult, an ideology, a religion that wants us dead. And we're supposed to, in response to a group saying, we want you dead, our response is supposed to be,
I know.
What?
Well,
We're not even allowed to respond to people who want us dead?
Yeah.
This is a classic tactic of co-opting the language, like
absolutely. They took all the words. Yeah,
especially the left. They hijack the language.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Ilkan, you were so right. This is an argument that I hear all the time about defending socialism. Well, Soviet Union, those who would agree the Soviet Union was it's like the biggest criminal enterprise, believe me. They didn't do things right. And I say, no, they did. Just see what they did based on their words. They did things right. It's just the wrong things.
Yes. Well said. Well said. Yeah. That's like when Saudi Arabia is following Sharia law, Iran is following Sharia law. These are Islamic law. And then they say, but that's not real Islam. And then when you look at the Prophet Mohammed and how he lived, it was like not too far from ISIS. And they say, oh, but that's not true Islam. So even the inventor of the religion didn't follow the Islam true. So who knows what's this true Islam?
Well,
so you're absolutely correct. They are following it correctly, but it is not correct. Yeah. Go ahead.
Bring it back to Harris. You mentioned Sam Harris. He says, far from these people not practicing the true Islam, they really understand Islam. They're the ones who really understand it.
The leader of ISIS had a PhD in Islamic theology.
Yeah, and I always thought that fanatical wings of every religion, the truest devotees to the truest word. Everybody else are wink, wink, nod, nod, deviating from it. Those who are saying kill the Jews are reading the book. Those who say kill infidels, whatever infidels happen to be, are reading it from the book. They are the fanatics, the orthodox. They are the most true to their religion, in my view. Though I didn't study religion, I didn't read the books, so I don't know.
No, you're right. And that, I mean, we all the power to the Reform Muslims who want to cherry pick their religion and bring it into this century. Good luck to them. They have a big job ahead of them. But yeah, you're absolutely correct that the fundamentalists are the ones that are following the religion closest. Samah, I just want to give you an opportunity to make sure that your message to Anya was, you didn't have anything more to say to her before I move on to Trisha.
Actually, I support whatever she said, and I'm here just to start something which we might call it the new normal, because this politically correct Islamophobia, anti-racism, and all these words put us all as an elite who are just fighting the government and the politicians. I'm thinking with you, how can we bring this information in a simple way to the people? Because at the end of the day, the suppression is from the government and also from our people who are our supportive. I'm from Syria, by the way, and now I'm a refugee in Germany. And I got married to a German guy who is a real support, a real love of my life after being divorced for 15 years. But the question and the bullying which I got and I get up till now, it is not only from the Muslims, it is from everyone, even questioning why you are still wearing your hijab. I'm wearing it because This is how I know my face, and I like it, and I'm wearing it because I want to support Yasmine, who wants to have her hair, and I want to support someone who doesn't, maybe she doesn't want to take off her hijab, or maybe she is not able. And because I want to give the message that this piece of shit on my head is not Islam. I just get to used to it. And frankly speaking, it is also to save some money and not to go to the hairdresser. And
I have a friend who grew
You
up
have full
Orthodox
freedom.
Jewish, and she's the same thing. She's full-on atheist, but she still wears like a, she covers her hair.
It is because
she
you
just
know,
got used
this
to
is
it.
how I
Yeah.
know my face, and this is how I want people. And trust me, because I work in a camp, in a museum, which mirroring the camp. So the easiest way to reach people is to have this, let's say,
Symbol.
so I'm the grandmother, or I'm the of those people. So it is the only way. I like it. I like this character. Then I'm so honest with people. So
Makes sense.
okay, so I don't want to talk about myself, because I'm so happy to meet you, because I thought I'm alone in my own box. And when I read Yasmine's book, it touched my soul, and now I'm trying to find more, because those books needs to be in Arabic.
Yeah.
My book's in Arabic.
Otherwise we are just talking to each other. So we need people to talk, we need people to fight, and we need people to understand. Because when you were talking about this moment of self-awareness, we need it, or I feel that everyone will have this moment of self-awareness, and it is a need for everyone. Otherwise, we will stay in the same circle: Putin, Assad, Khamenei, blah, blah, blah. So,
It's the beginning, though. And without it, there would not be the next step, don't you think?
yes. We need really to talk more, more than what we had. And
you know,
okay,
but
we will talk more. I will give you your space, and count on me. I will be with you wherever you go, and I will support you, and I will try to bring things in Arabic, because people,
that's so important.
yes, it is so important, because you notice that in Israel, women are killed because of Islam. Yesterday, a woman was killed by her father. Imagine, the father is the killer because she wants a portion. I don't know the whole story, but it touches me. It made me feel like you, Anya, helpless.
Yeah, me too. I can't bear it. And each time, again, like I told you before, each time I follow through the thread in situations like that, I arrive at the same place. If you thought that you cannot kill a person, let alone your daughter, that nothing else is more important, nothing else, then you wouldn't do it. So how is it that they bring, and the truth is we do, but they brainwash people into such things that they kill. I remember Sam standing on the stage and crying, talking about things like that. And to your fear, Yasmine, that we're so fragile, our minds are so fragile.
So the new normal, let's, because if we will keep talking that lefties, righties, it will really kill us. Let's do something and call it the new normal.
I don't know if it will work though, Sama, I'm sorry for criticizing you, but I think the new normal is used so many times already in social discourse that it already carries certain meanings.
Okay.
So we should
Let's,
think.
because the language, you know
Language
what,
is
I
important.
feel sometimes that what we speak becomes the home which we live in. And whenever I attend a meeting like what we have now, I feel that I'm going, or we are going just to repeat and repeat what happened in Russia, what happened in Syria, then what?
Yeah,
No,
I hear you.
I hear what you're saying, Samah. Sorry, Anya.
Yeah.
No,
To
go
cut you
ahead.
off.
No.
I was just gonna say, I hear what you're saying, Samah, but this is what we have. Conversation, discussion, discourse, argument, speaking loud and clearly again and again, being like Asra Namani said, being stubborn is a virtue in this space. You keep going and going. And look at Masih Alinejad just last night. She ended up, she was on Bill Maher. For 8 years, this woman has been screaming about the women in Iran. 8 years. Can you imagine in that time? Her mother went on TV and denounced her. Her brother was arrested. She had people in Brooklyn, New York with AK-47s sitting in front of her house, stalking her and her family, taking videos, planning on kidnapping her, taking her back to Iran. All of this that she's been through. And finally, the dam is breaking. So even though it might feel like we're not really doing much when we're just talking, sharing our stories, sharing our videos, it is helping. It is making a difference. We are getting our voices out there.
And I want to give one example. Yasmine, sorry, I didn't read your book yet, but I definitely will. But
I'll send it to you.
Of course, but I did read Ayan's book, Infidel, when it came out. It has a shocking quality to it, but beyond that, it's so important and interesting and informative. And I gave it to a friend of mine, an American, who, well, I'm American too, but she not a fresh immigrant as I am. And she is a very liberal persuasion from her childhood. I gave her this book, she read it, and she said, it shook my view of Islam. So the books that are well written and authentic and truthful, intellectually and emotionally, they make a difference. I believe in that.
I agree. Okay, last but not least, Trisha.
So I wondered, my experience is I left the left and it was it was so much part of my world. 20 years ago, I left it because of antisemitism, and it affected me greatly personally. And so I wonder what your experience is when you had these awakening moments. The walls came crumbling down about your ideology and your view of the state. Where did that leave you personally? Do you have any others to turn to commiserate with? Anybody who understood you? Were you just out there on your own with these thoughts?
No, I had an incredible, and what a great question, thank you. I had an incredible group of friends. We were all Jewish, we were all struggling with the same issues, and we read prohibited books, and we had discussions, talking over each other and yelling at each other and whatnot. So I certainly had not just support group, but a peer group to process everything in every way. So that's it. Being alone is something that strikes me when I think about very visible act of taking hijab off. Like in my case, dead eyes, thoughts to myself, don't reveal what you think, but no visible signification is less brave. Taking off a hijab and becoming an enemy of your family, of your friends, losing community, to me is such a severe punishment that when I see something like that, I feel like, oh my God, how will you survive something like that? So you raising this question made me, for the first time, reflect on the fact that I was lucky not to be alone ever.
That's wonderful. I'm really glad that was your experience, Anya.
Thank
And
you.
that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, was because I felt so isolated. That's my friend here to pick.
Yasmine, you have to go, we know.
Norby. Here. Sorry, Norby's being bad. Anya, before we leave, I just want to make sure that you've touched on everything that you wanted to say, that I'm not cutting you off.
No, I think it was great conversation. I really appreciate you guys listening to me. The reason I reached out to Yasmine was in response to account of a story of a girl who dropped the hijab and who was talking about the concept of other and needed support, was alone and isolated. And I said, I can provide support and I can be an example of the other, which is actually the same. And so and I'm really satisfied that we had a chance to really think and talk about this fact that we're the same. There are no enemies other than those who want to subjugate us. We are not enemies of each other. We are human beings that are trying to defend our dignity, because all our rights come down to dignity.
That's beautiful. Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much,
having
Anya.
me.
That was wonderful. Beautiful conclusion. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again, Anya.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
everybody. What a treasure hour. Bye-bye.
Bye.